My name's Craig, and I was married for 7 years. Honestly, the last 2 felt more like I was living with a housemate than a wife. The passion had faded long before, but I held on, hoping something would reignite. What finally shattered it all? One message from Las Vegas. That's where everything unraveled. I first met Cindy in my late 20s. We crossed paths at a networking mixer, nothing formal, just a casual local event. I wasn't expecting much, maybe a few polite conversations, and that would be it. We chatted for a bit, exchanged business cards, and I figured that was the end of that. But it wasn't. A few days later, she reached out. We started texting, then talking on the phone. Before I knew it, we were grabbing lunch during breaks, chatting over the weekends, and spending time together after work. Things progressed naturally. The connection grew quickly. So when we finally began dating, we didn't drag things out. There was no second guessing. It wasn't long before we were walking down the aisle. The first few years were good. We laughed often. We supported each other through ups and downs. We set goals, talked about our future. It felt like we were building something real, solid and stable. We weren't wealthy, but we had enough. What we both wanted most, though, was to start a family. We tried, then tried again, and kept trying. Each failure came with its own kind of heartbreak. We didn't talk about the pain much, but it was there, quietly eating away at us. Instead of turning toward one another, we slowly turned away. Whether we meant to or not, we poured ourselves into work. Cindy started taking on more projects. I shouldered more duties at my job. We still lived under the same roof, but our minds were worlds apart. We were drifting, quietly, gradually, until one day, I realized we were just 2 people sharing space, both wearing wedding rings. The emotional bond that once came effortlessly began to erode. Not all at once, but little by little, over the years. That warmth turned into habit. Love began to feel like an obligation. Deep down, I knew something was breaking between us, even if I didn't want to face it. By year 7, it was undeniable. Cindy no longer felt familiar. She became distant, a stranger in the home we'd built together. Her work hours stretched late into the evenings. Out-of-town trips started piling up. She always said it was for work, conferences, networking, retreats. There was always some professional excuse. But I couldn't help but question it. I work in the corporate world too. I know how infrequent, expensive, and rare those trips usually are. Yet for Cindy, they never stopped. Still, I wanted to believe her. More than that, I wanted to fight for us. I thought maybe if she didn't have to worry about money or feel overwhelmed, she could refocus on our relationship. So, I took on nearly all the financial responsibilities. I started covering her expenses, shouldering more of the load. I hoped that by relieving her stress, she might return to me, not just physically, but emotionally. For a brief moment, it seemed like it worked. She started coming home a bit earlier. She was around more often. I felt a flicker of hope. But that didn't last long. Just as quickly, she slipped back into the old habits. Late nights returned. The travel picked up again. When I asked her about it, she got defensive almost immediately. One evening, I sat down and gently asked if we could talk, if maybe we needed to find a way to reconnect. She didn't even look surprised. Just sighed and asked, "What is your problem? How exactly do you want us to reconnect?" I was stunned. I didn't have an answer for that. After that night, everything went downhill. Our communication became purely functional. Who's picking up groceries, what bills are due. Any attempt to go deeper emotionally was shut down. I suggested we go on date nights, just once a week. She told me she was too busy. I brought up therapy. She rolled her eyes like I had said something ridiculous. Even when I arranged things around her schedule, made plans on weekends she claimed to be free, she always had an excuse. Either she was too tired, or just not in the mood. I won't pretend it didn't hurt. Every time she turned me away, it felt like another wall went up between us. Eventually, even the smallest arguments would send her off to sleep in the guest room. At first, I told myself to be patient, to give her space. But deep down, I started to wonder if there was someone else. I didn't have proof. Nothing solid. But I've lived enough to know, emotional and physical intimacy doesn't just vanish overnight. When a wife suddenly disconnects from her husband on every level, it usually means she's finding that connection somewhere else. Then one evening, completely out of the blue, Cindy mentioned that her company was sending her on a team-building retreat. A full week, Saturday through Friday. And not just anywhere, Las Vegas. I just stared at her. A whole week in Vegas? It didn't make sense. I couldn't wrap my head around it. What kind of company shuts down for an entire week to do bonding exercises in Sin City? I wasn't looking to pick a fight. I simply asked what kind of retreat it was. Was it a conference? A workshop? Something formal? The second I asked, her entire demeanor changed. She got defensive instantly, like I had accused her of plotting a crime. "Why do you always have to ruin everything?" she snapped. "Are you saying I'm lying? You think I just made this up?" I stayed calm and said, "Cindy, I'm your husband. It's not crazy for me to want to know why your job thinks it's normal to spend a week in Vegas. That's not a typical team retreat." She didn't try to explain. She just exploded again. And then she said the words that floored me. "I'm only in this marriage because I choose to be. But if you keep pushing me, I'll leave and take everything from you." I sat there in silence, looking at the woman I married, listening to her threaten me like she was already gone. She left for Vegas that Saturday, just as she said. I remembered clearly that she said she'd be back by Friday. But I never truly believed her story. And when the house fell quiet after she left, I felt something strange. Peace. For the first time in months, I could breathe. Still, I didn't take her threat seriously. I figured it was just heat-of-the-moment talk, like before. I had no idea how wrong I was. On Thursday night, the day before she was supposed to return, I was unwinding after work, sitting on the couch, when my phone buzzed. It was a message from Cindy. I opened it casually, and my whole world just stopped. There she was, smiling in a photo next to a man I had never seen before. They were standing in front of what looked like a courthouse or registry office. Under the picture was a short message. "Just married my coworker. You're pathetic, by the way, for not calling me once during this retreat." For a moment, everything around me faded out. I couldn't think, couldn't feel. It was like every emotion, betrayal, shock, disgust, all hit me at once. I stared at the screen. Then I typed one word, "Cool." That was it. In that moment, something in me shut off completely. I was done. I took a screenshot of the message, just in case she tried to deny it later. Then I called the one person I knew would give me straight advice, Ryan, an old college friend and a top-tier family lawyer. I showed him the message. He read it and calmly said, "Let's talk tonight. Don't do anything rash until we speak." That call was the beginning of the end. By midnight, I knew I was through waiting around for her to suddenly remember how to love me. The first thing I did was freeze the joint bank account that her card was linked to. If she needed money to keep partying with her new husband, she'd have to find it somewhere else. I also locked all our shared credit cards. Then I scheduled a locksmith to come early the next morning and change every lock on the house. Friday came. Cindy flew back, as expected. I didn't know exactly when she landed, but I later found out she tried to use one of our cards at the airport and realized it had been shut off. When she got to the house, I was already at work. The locks had been changed. It didn't take long before I got a call from the local police. An officer said my wife was outside, claiming she couldn't get into the house. He asked if I could come unlock the door. When I arrived, I stayed calm. I told the officers that I was the sole owner of the house. My name was the only one on the deed. Cindy had left willingly. After what she'd done in Vegas, I didn't feel safe letting her back in without a serious conversation. The officers were respectful. They checked my documents, confirmed I was the legal owner, and agreed it was a civil issue, not something they could force. Cindy, however, lost it. Right there on the lawn, she had a full meltdown, yelling, cursing, the whole scene. She even started claiming the wedding was a joke. We were drunk. It's Vegas. It didn't mean anything. I didn't argue. I didn't need to. I looked at the officers and said, "Please ask her to leave. My lawyer will be in touch." She called it a prank, but it didn't feel like one. Not to me. You don't accidentally marry someone in Vegas, pose for photos, send that to your husband, and then laugh it off like it's nothing. Even if she was drunk, who does that? That same week, I met with my lawyer. We filed for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences and suspected infidelity. I didn't need concrete evidence of cheating. Her message, the photo, her behavior, it was more than enough. I also requested a full separation of assets. Cindy didn't waste time getting her own lawyer, but she wasn't prepared for what we did next. Ryan contacted the Clark County Recorder's Office in Nevada to verify whether the joke wedding was legally binding. Turns out it was. Her new husband was named Jared. And it got worse. Jared was already married. Yep, married. That made their little Vegas stunt not just foolish, but criminal. We were now dealing with bigamy, a felony offense. Ryan acted quickly, submitting everything to the district attorney, screenshots, documents, the marriage certificate, the hotel records. An investigation was launched. Both Cindy and Jared were contacted by authorities. In the meantime, the family court granted me temporary financial protection. Cindy couldn't access any remaining funds or touch our shared accounts. I was also given full use of the house. Since my name was the only one on the deed, the judge found it reasonable. All joint assets were frozen by court order. Nothing could be hidden or moved around behind the scenes. That gave me the breathing space I needed. When the criminal case moved forward, Cindy was formally charged with bigamy. She tried everything to downplay it, told the judge it was just for fun, said she thought it was fake, insisted they were drunk and didn't know what they were doing. But the prosecution had evidence. A legally signed marriage certificate. Hotel receipts. They had even checked in under Mr. and Mrs. Months dragged by in court. But when the ruling came, the judge made it clear, this wasn't some harmless mistake. The court saw the situation for exactly what it was, a second marriage made while she was still legally my wife. In the eyes of the law, that was a serious offense. Eventually, the verdict came in, guilty. Now, before anyone jumps to conclusions thinking she ended up doing time in a jumpsuit, let me explain how it played out. The judge opted against a prison sentence. Probably because it was her first criminal charge, and maybe because the public embarrassment and legal chaos she brought on herself were seen as punishment enough. Instead of jail, she was handed a hefty fine, $10,000, and placed on probation. She also had to complete a number of hours in community service. It wasn't a slap on the wrist, not by a long shot. The felony conviction would stay on her record permanently. And while the courtroom chapter had closed, the fallout was only just beginning. Once word got around about her conviction, things unraveled quickly at her workplace. Her employer wanted no association with a felon, especially in a corporate setting where image and trust matter. HR didn't hesitate. She was terminated almost immediately. To make matters worse, the company confirmed that no such team-building retreat had ever been scheduled. That entire excuse had been a lie. By that point, I was past the stage of caring. My own legal proceedings wrapped up without drama. The court approved the divorce in full. No alimony, no financial ties, nothing left binding me to her. They acknowledged her behavior as a breach of the marriage, which factored heavily into the final ruling. I retained full ownership of the house. My savings remained untouched. Most importantly, I walked away without being emotionally or financially bled dry. In the end, that reckless Vegas stunt cost her everything she thought she controlled. When I look back on it now, I honestly couldn't have scripted a better way out. After years of being stuck in a marriage that felt like a slow erosion of who I was finally free, all thanks to one impulsive, ego-fueled mistake on her part. That spur-of-the-moment Vegas wedding, as ridiculous as it was, turned out to be the break I never knew I needed. It gave me solid legal footing to act decisively without coming off as the bad guy. It protected my assets, kept my home secure, and spared me from being dragged through a long, bitter legal war. Even now, I sometimes catch myself wondering what was going through her mind. Did she think I'd fall apart? That I'd chase her, beg her to come back, act like her betrayal was something we could just sweep under the rug? I'll probably never understand what led her to believe any of that was possible, and I'm fine with that. The only thing I know for certain is this: she handed me an out, and I didn't hesitate. When it comes to divorce, it doesn't get cleaner than that.